I didn't scream when I saw my husband tangled in the sheets with my own sister. I didn't even gasp. Instead, I gently closed the door, turned that antique brass key in the lock, and began the most important project of my life: their total destruction. My name is Elise Brett, and I'm a pharmaceutical researcher. My entire world runs on precision, on data, on logic. That Thursday morning started like any other. Daniel kissed me goodbye over coffee, his expensive watch catching the light as he headed to another client meeting. My little sister Molly texted me a selfie with hearts, asking to borrow my necklace again. Everything in its place. Everything perfect. Except for that strange knot in my stomach during my conference presentation. The one I couldn't explain with any rational thought. Something whispered, "Go home." So I did. The drive took 15 minutes. 15 minutes that separated the woman who walked out her door that morning from the one who would return. I noticed them before I even reached the bedroom. Molly's scuffed boots in my hallway, the ones I'd seen 100 times. Daniel's jacket thrown carelessly over the chair he always hung it on. And then I opened the bedroom door. My bedroom. My bed. My husband. My sister. Here's what they didn't know about me. I don't break. I calculate. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. And I mean this sincerely. If you're finding yourself drawn into this story, would you take just a second to hit that like button and subscribe? It truly helps this channel grow and means the world to me. Also, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Your city, your state, anywhere in the world. I love knowing who's listening to these stories. Now, back to that locked door and what I found when I started digging. Because what I discovered in the next few hours wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy that had been building for months, involving my inheritance, my career, and a plan so twisted that even my scientific mind struggled to process it. They thought I was naive, predictable, safe. They had no idea who they were really dealing with. Standing in that hallway with the key still warm in my hand, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months: clarity. Because the truth was, part of me had known. Not consciously, not in a way I could prove in a lab, but in the way your body knows when something's wrong before your brain catches up. 3 months ago, Daniel started coming home smelling different. Not perfume. He was too smart for that. It was subtler. Lavender. The same essential oil Molly diffused in her apartment, the one she swore helped her creative energy. When I mentioned it, he laughed and said the new secretary at work was into that hippie stuff. I filed it away. Data point number 1. Then came the business trips. Daniel had always traveled for sales, but suddenly they doubled. Chicago, Austin, Seattle. Except one night he called me from his hotel room, and I heard it in the background. The specific creak of the loose floorboard in Molly's apartment hallway. I'd helped her move in. I knew that sound. When I asked about the noise, he said it was the hotel door. Data point number 2. Molly started canceling our sister dinners. The ones we'd had every Tuesday for 8 years. Ever since Mom died and I'd promised to look after her. Work stuff, she'd say. Creative deadline. But Molly had never met a deadline in her life. She was the free spirit, the artist, the one I'd been supporting financially while she found herself. The one who wore my clothes without asking and called me her rock. Data point number 3. The missed calls should have been the clearest sign. I'd phoned Daniel during lunch, and he wouldn't answer for hours. When he finally called back, his excuses were always smooth, always logical. In a meeting. Phone died. Driving. But twice, when he didn't answer, Molly's phone went straight to voicemail at exactly the same time. What were the statistical odds of that? Data point number 4. Last month, I found a receipt in Daniel's car. Dinner for 2 at Mariposa, the restaurant where we'd celebrated our 5th anniversary. The date on it was a Thursday. The same Thursday he'd told me he was in Denver. When I asked him about it, he looked me straight in the eye and said it was a client dinner, that Denver got rescheduled. The lie came so easily, so practiced. I wanted to be wrong. God, how I wanted to be wrong. So I did what any good scientist does when faced with a hypothesis. I started collecting evidence. I told myself I was being paranoid, that my hyper-rational mind was seeing patterns where none existed. But standing there with that locked door between us, I finally understood. My only mistake hadn't been missing the signs. It was waiting so long to act on them. The conference was supposed to run until 6. I was presenting on protein synthesis inhibitors to a room full of colleagues who spoke my language, Data, precision, reproducible results. This was my element. But at 2:30, right in the middle of a question about methodology, I felt it again. That knot. Tighter this time, pulling at something deep in my chest. My hands started trembling as I advanced the PowerPoint slide. The room felt too hot, too small. I heard myself say, "I apologize, I need to cut this short," and watched the confused faces blur as I grabbed my laptop and headed for the exit. Dr. Reeves caught my arm in the hallway, concerned, asking if I was all right. I told her it was a migraine. She believed me because I never lied, never left early, never broke protocol. Until that day. The walk to my car took forever. Every step felt like moving through water, my body fighting against what my mind was about to confirm. I kept telling myself I was being irrational, that this wasn't like me, that there were 1,000 reasonable explanations for the unease crawling up my spine. But I'd spent my entire career learning to trust empirical evidence, and my body was screaming data I couldn't ignore. I called Daniel first, straight to voicemail. His office line rang 4 times before his assistant picked up. "Oh, Mr. Clark left early today," she said cheerfully. Said he wasn't feeling well. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. I hadn't even started driving yet. Then I called Molly. Voicemail. I texted her. "Hey, want to grab coffee?" 3 minutes passed. 5. Normally she responded within seconds, usually with a string of emojis and complaints about her latest failed art project. Nothing. The 15-minute drive home became an eternity compressed into moments. I remember every detail with the kind of crystal clarity that only comes with trauma. The way the traffic light at Madison and 5th seemed to stay red for an hour. The elderly man crossing the street with his dog, moving so slowly I wanted to scream. The radio playing some cheerful pop song about summer love, while my world crystallized into something sharp and breakable. I ran every scenario. Maybe Daniel really was sick, home in bed. Maybe Molly was in a yoga class with her phone off. Maybe I was having some kind of breakdown, my obsession with control finally manifesting as paranoid delusions. I almost turned around twice. Almost. But then I pulled into my driveway and saw Molly's car parked on the street, half hidden behind the neighbor's hedge. She never parked there. She always used my driveway, always joked about sister privileges. I sat there for 30 seconds, engine running, still giving them a chance to be innocent. Then I saw the living room curtain move, and I knew. I used my key slowly, careful not to make a sound. The door opened without its usual creak because I'd oiled the hinges just last week. One of those domestic tasks I took pride in, keeping our home perfect, keeping everything running smoothly. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house was quiet but not empty. There's a specific quality to silence when you're not alone, a thickness to the air that changes with other people's breathing. I slipped off my heels and left them by the door next to Molly's scuffed boots. My heart was pounding so hard I was certain they'd hear it, but I moved through my own home like a ghost, barely breathing. Daniel's jacket on the chair, Molly's bag on my kitchen counter, 2 wine glasses in the sink, the expensive crystal ones we only used for special occasions. I touched one, still slightly warm. The stairs didn't creak. I'd fix that too. Every step brought me closer to a truth I still hoped I was wrong about, even as the evidence mounted with scientific certainty. At the top of the landing, I could hear something. Not words, just sounds. The kind that turn your stomach inside out when you recognize them coming from your own bedroom. Our bedroom door was cracked open maybe 2 inches. Just enough. I should have kicked it open. Screamed. Thrown something. That's what normal people do, isn't it? That's what someone with healthy emotional responses would have done. But as I stood there looking through that crack, watching my husband's back, watching my sister's hand tangled in his hair, watching them in the bed I'd made that morning with military precision, something extraordinary happened. I went completely, perfectly calm. It was like dropping into ice water. Every emotion just stopped. My hand steadied. My breathing evened out. My mind shifted into the same mode it entered during complex research problems. Analytical, methodical, calculating. I watched them for maybe 30 seconds, collecting data. The way he touched her. The familiarity of it. This wasn't their first time. Not even close. Molly laughed at something he whispered, and I recognized that laugh. The one she used when she wanted something, when she was performing. She was performing even now, even with him. That's when I understood. This wasn't about passion or love or something that had swept them away in a moment of weakness. This was planned. I stepped back from the door, pulled my phone from my pocket, and took 3 photographs through the crack. Clinical. Documented. Then I so gently pulled the door closed. The antique key was already in the lock from the outside. Original hardware from 1920 that I'd insisted on keeping when we renovated. I turned it. The click was soft but final. Then I sat down on the hallway floor, opened my laptop, and began to work. The shared cloud account was Daniel's idea. For important documents, he'd said. In case anything ever happens to one of us. I'd thought it was sweet, responsible. Now I understood it was reconnaissance. He needed to know what I had, what I knew, what I was worth. What he didn't know was that I'd installed a monitoring app 6 weeks ago, after data point number 7, when I'd caught him in a lie about a weekend golf trip that never appeared on his credit card statement. Every file he'd accessed, every document he'd uploaded, every search he'd made. I had a record of all of it. I started with the folder labeled Estate Planning. My fingers were steady on the keyboard, that supernatural calm still holding me in its grip. Inside were documents I'd never seen before. PDFs of my mother's will, scanned copies of the trust documents, and then a file that made my blood freeze. Mental Competency Clause m.bret.pdf. I opened it. My mother's estate was worth $4.3 million. I'd known that. What I hadn't known was the clause her lawyer had buried in Section 17, Paragraph C. If the primary beneficiary, me, was deemed mentally incompetent or unstable, the assets would transfer to the secondary beneficiary. Molly. There was a second document, a Google Doc with edit history intact. I could see exactly when each section had been added and by whom. Daniel's account had created it. Molly's had edited it. The title made me want to vomit. Project Inheritance, Timeline and Evidence. I scrolled through it, each line worse than the last. Asterisk week 1 to 4. Established pattern of Elise's erratic behavior. D to mention to friends she's been stressed, not sleeping. M to express concern to father. Asterisk. Asterisk week 5 to 8. Incident at work. D has contact at her lab who can report concerns about her judgment. Need documentation. Asterisk. Asterisk week 9 to 12. Increase pressure. Marriage problems. Make her seem paranoid. Screenshots of accusatory texts to be saved. Asterisk. Asterisk week 13. Psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Rosen, M's therapist. Willing to provide assessment $4.15K. Asterisk. They'd been planning this for 3 months. Every business trip had been a strategy session. Every canceled sister dinner had been Molly choosing him over me. Every time Daniel had looked at me with those concerned eyes and asked if I was, "Okay, you seem stressed lately," he'd been building a case. My hands started shaking, but not from fear. From rage so pure it felt like electricity. I kept scrolling. Found spreadsheets projecting how they'd split the money. Found text messages I'd never seen, pulled from Daniel's phone backup. Molly. She actually thanked me for checking in on her mental health. God, she's so easy to manipulate. Daniel. 2 more months. Then we're free. That's when I heard it. Movement behind the bedroom door. Daniel's voice, sleepy and satisfied. "Babe, what time is it?" Then silence. Then the door handle turning. Locked. His voice again, confused now. "Elise?" I smiled and kept typing. I hadn't spoken to my father in 4 years. Not since Mom's funeral, when he'd shown up with his 3rd wife and tried to contest the will that left everything to me and Molly. Richard Brett didn't do family. He did acquisitions, mergers, and winning. Mom had kept us away from him for good reason. But right now, I needed exactly what he was. A ruthless bastard with unlimited resources and a pathological need to destroy anyone who tried to play him. My finger hovered over his contact. Behind the door, I could hear Daniel's voice rising. "Elise, are you out there? What the hell is going on?" Molly's voice joined his higher, panicked. "Elise? This isn't funny. Open the door." I pressed call. He answered on the 2nd ring. "Elise." His voice was exactly as I remembered. Cold, assessing, already calculating why his estranged daughter would break 4 years of silence. "This is unexpected." "Hi, Dad. I need you to open your email. Right now." A pause. "I'm in the middle of." Daniel and Molly are locked in my bedroom. Together. And they've been planning to steal Mom's inheritance by having me declared mentally incompetent. I kept my voice level, clinical. speaking his language. I'm sending you live access to my security cameras and approximately 70 pages of documentation. You have 30 seconds to decide if you want to watch your youngest daughter's life implode, or if you want to help me bury them both. I heard the click of a mouse. His breathing changed. Security camera access received. What am I looking at? Bedroom, hallway, and living room feeds. The file I just sent includes their complete strategy, timeline, and evidence of Daniel's embezzlement from his company, which I discovered in his cloud backup about 10 minutes ago. He's been skimming for 8 months. $250,000, maybe more. Another pause. Longer this time. When he spoke again, there was something almost like respect in his voice. You locked them in there. I did. How long have you known? About the affair? 3 months of suspicions, 30 minutes of confirmation. About the inheritance scheme? 17 minutes. Behind the door, Daniel was pounding now. Elise, this is insane. Let us out. Molly was crying, that performative sob she'd perfected as a child to get out of trouble. It had worked on Mom every time. Are you recording this? Dad asked. Audio and video. Baby monitor on the dresser they didn't notice. I've got everything. For the first time in my life, I heard Richard Brett laugh with genuine pleasure. You really are my daughter. What do you need? Lawyers. The best you have. And I want you to call Molly. Right now. Put her on speaker through the door. Why? Because she needs to know that Daddy's favorite little girl just lost everything. While Dad's legal team started their work, I opened a fresh document and titled it simply, The List. Every person who deserved to know the truth. Every life they'd tried to manipulate. Every lie that needed unraveling. First name, Marcus Webb, Molly's fiancé. I'd forgotten about him in the chaos, but there he was in her Instagram from 3 days ago. Her hand with his grandmother's ring, caption reading, luckiest girl alive. They'd gotten engaged 2 months ago. The timeline clicked into place. She was hedging her bets. If the inheritance scheme failed, she'd have Marcus's family money. If it succeeded, she'd have millions and Daniel. My sister really had thought of everything. I called him. He answered cheerfully. Elise. Hey, is this about the engagement party? Molly said you'd help with. Marcus, I need you to check your email. I'm sending you something right now. Okay? Is everything all right? I attached 3 photos. The ones I'd taken through the bedroom door crack. Clinical evidence. Those were taken approximately 45 minutes ago. In my house. That's my husband. I thought you should know before you married her. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 8 seconds. Then, Jesus Christ. Elise, I'm so sorry, I had no idea. Neither did I. Check your email again. I sent him the inheritance scheme documents. She was planning to leave you anyway. Once she got the money. I heard him breathing hard. The sound of someone's world restructuring. That manipulative. I bought her a car last month. She said she needed it for. He stopped. Thank you for telling me. You deserve the truth. Next name. Stephen Garrison, Daniel's boss and CEO of Garrison Analytics. This call would be trickier. Stephen golfed with Daniel, considered him a protege. But Stephen also had a reputation for zero tolerance when it came to corporate integrity. I'd met him at enough company dinners to know he valued loyalty above everything. Mrs. Clark, what a pleasant surprise. Mr. Garrison, I'm calling to report embezzlement within your company. The perpetrator is Daniel Clark, your VP of Sales. I'm sending documented evidence of approximately $247,000 in fraudulent expense reports, ghost clients, and redirected commission payments over the past 8 months. The warmth drained from his voice instantly. That's a serious accusation. I have bank statements, forged invoices, and email trails. I'm copying your legal department right now. I thought you'd prefer to handle this internally before I contact the authorities, which I'll be doing in approximately 1 hour regardless. Where is Daniel now? I glanced at the bedroom door. The pounding had stopped. Now there was just frantic whispering. Indisposed. But I'm certain he'll make himself available for your questions very soon. Mrs. Clark, if this is some kind of marital. Check your email, Mr. Garrison. Then decide if this is marital or criminal. I hung up and added the next name to my list. The baby monitor had been Daniel's idea too. For when we have kids, he'd said, setting it up in the bedroom 6 months ago. We should test it now, make sure it works. I'd thought he was being sweet, planning our future. Now I understood he'd been rehearsing, making sure there were no surveillance devices he didn't know about. He'd checked for the monitor, found it, dismissed it as harmless. What he didn't know was that I'd replaced it 3 weeks ago with a model that recorded everything to cloud storage. Every whisper, every planning session they'd had in my own bed while I was at work. I connected my laptop to the portable speaker I'd retrieved from downstairs and positioned it right outside the bedroom door. Then I opened the audio files and selected my favorite. Dated 2 weeks ago, 2:47 p.m., right after I'd left for a department meeting. I pressed play. Molly's voice filled the hallway crystal clear. God, she actually believes you love her. It's almost sad. Daniel's laugh. She believes what she wants to believe. That's what makes her easy. Do you think she suspects anything? Elise? No. She's too logical for intuition. She needs proof, data, evidence. By the time she has enough to suspect, we'll already have the money. The pounding on the door stopped. Total silence from inside the room. I played the next clip. Daniel's voice. Your sister is the most naive person I've ever met. She thinks everyone operates on her moral code. It's actually pathetic. Molly giggling. She still thinks we're close. She texted me yesterday asking if I was eating enough. Like she's my mom or something. That's perfect. Keep playing the struggling little sister. She eats that shit up. I heard movement behind the door. Molly's voice small and panicked. Elise, please, that's not. We were just. I turned up the volume and played another clip. Daniel. Once we get her declared incompetent, we split it 60-40, right? Molly. I should get more. It's my family money. We agreed. I'm doing the heavy lifting here. Sleeping with her, pretending to care about her boring job. I had to pretend to love her my whole life. Trust me, you're getting the better deal. Both of them laughing. I sat there on the floor outside the door, back against the wall, playing clip after clip. Their voices echoing through the hallway, each one more damning than the last. Every cruel word, every calculated manipulation. Every time they'd called me stupid, naive, easy to control. Daniel started yelling. Stop it. Elise, turn it off. This isn't fair. I selected one more file. The most recent one, from just 5 days ago. Molly's voice. Do you ever feel bad? She's been so good to me. A pause. Then Daniel. She's a means to an end. That's all she ever was. I finally spoke, my voice calm and clear through the door. No, Daniel. You were. 3 hours and 42 minutes. That's how long they were locked in that room. Long enough for my father's attorneys to arrive from downtown. Long enough for the police to review the embezzlement evidence. Long enough for Daniel's boss to freeze his corporate accounts. Long enough for Marcus to post a very public statement on social media about his broken engagement. Long enough for me to transfer every dollar from our joint accounts into one Daniel couldn't touch. The sun was setting when I finally stood up from my position on the floor. My legs had gone numb, but I barely felt it. Behind the door, they'd gone quiet an hour ago. I imagined them sitting there, naked and trapped, listening to their own voices destroying them over and over again. I turned the key. The door opened slowly. Daniel stood there in his boxers, his face red with rage and shame. Molly had wrapped herself in my bedsheet, the expensive Egyptian cotton ones I'd bought for our anniversary. Her makeup was streaked down her face, and she couldn't meet my eyes. You can't do this, Daniel started, his voice shaking. You can't just lock people in a room. That's illegal. That's false imprisonment, I said calmly. Misdemeanor in most cases. I'm sure my lawyers can handle it. I gestured down the stairs. Speaking of which, they're waiting for you, along with some other interested parties. Molly's head snapped up. Who else is here? Come see. I watched them descend the stairs, Daniel first with false bravado, Molly trailing behind clutching that sheet. I followed at a distance, savoring every step. The living room looked like the world's worst intervention. My father stood by the fireplace in his $1,000 suit, face carved from granite. 2 attorneys flanked him, briefcases open on my coffee table. 2 police officers stood by the door. One I recognized as Officer Patterson from the White Collar Crimes Division. And on the couch sat Stephen Garrison, Daniel's now former boss, looking at his protege like something he'd scraped off his shoe. Daniel stopped so fast Molly bumped into him. What is this? This, I said, walking past them to stand beside my father, is consequence. Officer Patterson stepped forward. Daniel Clark, We have some questions regarding financial irregularities at Garrison Analytics. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Daniel's voice cracked. Elise, tell them this is a misunderstanding. I looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time since I'd opened that bedroom door. This man I'd loved for 8 years. This man I'd built a life with. This stranger who'd called me pathetic while planning my destruction. The only misunderstanding, I said quietly, was mine. Thinking you were capable of human decency. Molly finally spoke, her voice small. Elise, please. I'm your sister. Dad's laugh was sharp and cold. Not anymore, she's not. 2 years later, I'm sitting on a deck in Monterey watching the sun turn the Pacific Ocean into liquid gold. My hair is down. Actually down, falling loose around my shoulders in a way that would have felt uncontrolled, unprofessional, impossible before. Now it just feels like freedom. The Brett Foundation for Women in STEM occupies a converted warehouse 3 blocks from the water. We've funded 42 women through graduate programs in the last 18 months. No strings attached. No family clauses. No competency requirements. Just support, pure and simple. The kind I wish someone had given Molly before she decided destruction was easier than creation. I don't think about her much anymore. The last I heard, she was living in Portland, working at a coffee shop, trying to rebuild a life from the ashes of the one she burned down. Dad cut her off completely. Turns out even he has limits when it comes to betrayal. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty about that, about how thoroughly I dismantled her world. Then I remember her laugh when she called me pathetic, and the guilt evaporates like morning fog. Daniel went to prison. 18 months for embezzlement, plus restitution he'll be paying off for the next decade. Stephen Garrison made an example of him. Press releases, criminal charges, the works. Last I heard, Daniel was working at his brother's car dealership in Ohio, divorced from the life he thought he deserved. I sold the house 3 days after they were escorted out. Couldn't stand to sleep another night in a building they'd contaminated with their schemes. Took a loss on it, actually selling so quickly. But some things are worth more than money. Like waking up without the ghost of betrayal haunting your hallway. My father and I have dinner once a month now. It's stilted, formal, probably unhealthy by most therapeutic standards. But there's an honesty to it I never had before. We're both control freaks who trust data over emotion. We're both capable of ruthless calculation when backed into corners. I used to think I was like my mother, soft, giving, always seeing the best in people. Turns out I'm Richard Brett's daughter after all. I've learned that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's someone new in my life now. Rachel. She teaches marine biology at the university and thinks my obsessive organization is charming instead of suffocating. We met at a symposium, bonded over statistical analysis, and she's never once asked me to be smaller or less intense or more trusting than I am. She knows the whole story. I told her on our 3rd date, expecting her to run. Instead, she'd smiled and said, "Smart and strategic. I like that." This morning, she left a note on my coffee maker. "Moved your meeting to noon. You need to learn to sleep in." I'm still working on that part. The relaxing, the trusting, the believing that not everyone is running a long con designed to destroy me. But I'm learning. And for the first time in my life, I'm not performing competence or control or the role of the responsible one. I'm not managing anyone's chaos but my own. I'm not fixing broken people who resent me for it. I'm just living. The foundation is hosting a gala next month. 20 scholarships to award, 500 guests. My father giving the keynote about supporting women in science. The irony isn't lost on either of us. Rachel will be there in the dress I'm not supposed to know she bought. Dad will write a check with more zeros than necessary, because that's his love language. And I'll stand on that stage and talk about second chances and rebuilding and the strength it takes to walk away from people who see your kindness as weakness. I won't mention Molly or Daniel by name. They don't deserve the space in my story anymore. But I'll think about that moment in the hallway, sitting on the floor with that locked door between us, choosing calculation over chaos, choosing myself over the performance of who they needed me to be. My phone buzzes. "Rachel. Tacos for dinner?" And yes, before you ask, I already checked that the place has your hot sauce. I smile and text back a simple yes, then set the phone down and return to watching the ocean. Somewhere out there, Daniel is probably still bitter, still blaming me for consequences he earned himself. Molly might be in therapy, Or she might be planning her next scheme with someone else's sister. I don't know and I don't care. Because here's what I learned in those 3 hours and 42 minutes. Some people will take everything you offer and still resent you for having more. Some people will weaponize your trust and call it strategy. And some betrayals are so complete, so calculated, that they burn away everything weak in you and leave only steel. I am steel now, but I'm also learning to be soft again, selectively, with people who've earned it. With Rachel, who sees my sharp edges and doesn't ask me to file them down. With my work, which helps women who remind me of who I could have been if I'd had different support. Even, occasionally, with my father, who's trying in his limited way to be something resembling parent. The sun finally touches the horizon, and I realize I've been sitting here for an hour without checking my email once. Without organizing anything. Without controlling a single variable. Progress. Tomorrow I'll return to my perfectly structured life, meetings and data, and the comfortable precision of scientific thinking. But tonight, I'm just a woman on a deck in California, hair down and defenses lowered, learning that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something beautiful from the wreckage and never looking back. I didn't scream when I found them. I didn't break when they tried to destroy me. And I didn't lose myself in the aftermath. I found myself instead. And that, in the end, was worth more than any inheritance they could have stolen. I hope Elise's story reminded you that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose yourself, even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted. If this story moved you, made you think, or kept you locked in until the very end, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support genuinely means everything and helps me bring you more stories like this one. And I'm curious. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in Elise's position. Would you have confronted them immediately, or would you have played the long game like she did? Also, let me know where you're watching from, your city, your state, anywhere in the world. I love hearing from you and knowing this community is growing. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire journey. Until the next story, take care of yourself, trust your intuition, and remember, you're always stronger than the people who underestimate you.